And here we are again, another episode of the Chairsofter Show, episode number 115, or number 2 for the live shows, I guess. Good evening, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
Joining me this week, we've got Keith, Joe, and Craig back, and we'd also like to introduce Ben for Opies Airsoft. Good evening, Ben.
Hello, good evening, Joe.
How are you?
Very well, very well. I finished the night shift this morning, so brain's a bit weird.
Oof.
Just what you want. We're airsofters, all of our brains are weird.
Yeah, that's the joys of airsoft. So, well, before we get into sort of the nitty gritty of the show, Ben, if you'd just like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Ben, also known on socials as Opies Airsoft. I started playing airsoft roughly 8 years ago. I got into it when I saw one of my mates from school was playing it, and at the time I was big into like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare and stuff. So naturally you go, yeah, I want to do that, I want a bit of that. And then my sort of journey, I suppose, sort of spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah, cool. We've got a comment coming in already. I've had one from Gary Barden. Evening, gents. Saturday evening. What the fuck? Yeah. So, because of schedules at the moment, we've had to do a couple of episodes on Saturdays coming up. So, we're going to try and get it on the Fridays moving forward, but we know schedules can't always work out like that. So, yeah, we're moving it. Ian Maxwell also in the chat with good evening.
Hey.
Evening, Ian. Good evening.
Hello.
Ian's a gent.
Ian is a gent. Right. Which one do we go to first for the topic? Should we go to the new riffs first? The ones we'll start off light-hearted and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, sure. Let's hit them.
So, there's been a couple of things that Keith's pointed out over the last couple of days. Some new riffs that have been coming through.
If I have to see him, you have to see him.
I'm going to start with his favourite one. And we're going to have this thing.
We're looking at the Crytek Alpine Special Edition with the new rail that they've developed for P90s. I don't know if they own it. I think they do. But yeah, this is a whole new front end developed for the P90s. The Alpine Edition is something they did with the Vector. They basically paint it white, charge an extra $200 for it.
Yeah.
Same here, I suppose. Thoughts?
I like it.
I love it.
What's wrong
my thing is I look ridiculous with a P90, so like it's just like I might as well just be holding a pistol at that point up in my shoulder. It's ridiculous if I hold one of these things. So not for me personally.
P90s, I just can't use them. I've got gorilla arms and getting. I don't know. Looks like I'm trying to hug them.
They're not very ergonomic at all. They're not very ergonomic.
I like bullpups as well, but and that's technically because of the bullpup. The rail it does look good. The full gun looks fucking hideous.
Do you know what it looks like? And correct me if I'm wrong. Have you all seen the Elite Force Hater or Umrex Hater or whatever makes it over here? It looks like they've taken the barrel and upper chassis of that and then just slapped it onto the top of a P90.
This will look good, surely.
That's what it feels like. It looks like to me.
Yeah, Ian's banging the money, am I right?
Yeah, Ian summed it up absolutely perfectly there. That is bang on. You either love it or hate it.
I was going to say, has anybody ever known someone to look at a P90 and go, "Oh, it's okay," you know?
Yeah. I'd own one if someone gave me one, but I wouldn't buy one with money. That's the sort of.
Yeah, it's something if you were gifted, you would keep for more than a week.
Yeah. To be fair, though, they perform amazing. Adam, Sierra Gulf, he's got one. The black, normal one when it was first released. And, performance-wise, it's brilliant. The range on it for such a tiny thing's amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I can't remember which order I did these in. So, Mystery Riff number 2. Oh, yeah. This thing.
So this is the G&G T91, which is a Taiwanese service rifle, removable carry handle. And the more I've looked at this, the more I've started to like it, and I hate myself for it.
I knew you'd come around eventually.
I've seen it with furniture on, like when they've tacked it up, and it looks pretty cool actually. But the first time I saw it, I was just like, "What is going on? There's so much happening here."
Well, when you look at it initially, you just think, "Oh, it's an M4A1, isn't it?" But then the more you look, you go, "Oh, the heresy gets worse and worse and worse the more you look at it."
It's like
so the handguard is triangular, for one, which is unusual. Boy, it's just odd.
It is.
It's got a bit of everything going on, hasn't it? Really. But G&G have got a strange habit of taking the new tech that they've developed and then putting it all in random, barely heard of rifles before they put it into like the mainstream stuff. And I think this is one of the first rifles that they put in the Gen 3 MOSFET and ETUs in.
Yeah.
Because they did it with the last one. They did a Type 91 with the Gen 2 MOSFET when they first released that. And no one's ever seen it. Because it's such a kind of fringe rifle. It's definitely kind of a specialist collector kind of go-to. But weirdly, it's the highest tech G&G that there was at the time was something no one's ever heard of and has probably never seen. And it's going to happen again before they decide to stick. Well, the ARP 9 3.0, which we'll get onto in a moment, I suppose. Spoiler alert. That's the second thing. I don't know. I like it. I think it looked better with square mags, like VN mags in it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
That's a removable carry handle.
Yeah, Ian's raised a point. You could put not found unusual handguard. How original M16s had the triangular handguard.
Yeah, it's not the M16 triangular handguard though. It's quite heavily textured on the underside. And then
it reminds me of something, but I can't quite figure out what. If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I think it looks like the FN FAL.
I don't know. The grip that you've got going on the lower of the handguard kind of reminds me of the grenade launchers that you can get.
Yeah.
Same kind of visual going on.
Yeah.
The front sight is quite funky, and then it's got like a lower rail if you look underneath the front sight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's weird, isn't it?
Well, that's a cheeky one.
There's a long and a short version, and the long one's very DMR-like, so maybe it's a tripod.
Could be, yeah. Could be a mounting point just to get a bipod on the front or something. But other than that, like generally speaking, all the furniture looks like anything you'd have on any other rifle, really, that you could put on any sort of modified AR variant.
Yeah, I don't know. The more I look at it, the more I feel it.
Yeah. Come on, get with it.
I don't know why, but I feel like
it's a yes for me.
Bit like a Fallout rifle. There's a rifle on Fallout that reminds me of that.
Yeah, you could do a lot with that actually to make that look very Fallout and go for that nice customised look. Okay, the last one.
I think it's the actual assault rifle on a Fallout.
Yeah. Moving on to the last one, we've got the new.
This is the new ARP 9. Yeah. So they've funked it up a little bit, and I don't like the ARP 9 1 or 2. To be fair, but this one kind of tickles something. It's got. It looks like a Daniel Defense style pistol grip as well, which is unusual for that. Usually they've got the super futuristic stuff.
It reminds me of the SMG in Halo 2.
Yeah,
I know it bugged me. And I like it. I would happily run through them.
Yeah, that's a new style mag for the ARPs by the looks of it. It looks like a shorter.
Yeah. I was going to say it looks different.
Translucent.
It just looks like a pistol mag.
See-through, and you've got I'm guessing that's like a faux spring, fake spring.
G&G makes it.
Yeah.
Ian's asking who make it.
Yeah. So this is the G&G ARP 9 Gen 3.
That's from Brad. Evening, Brad.
Brad.
He says it looks like it's trying to be a Vector.
I don't know if I can agree with that point.
No.
Yeah, I can see where it's coming from, but this
with
looks
the
like
design
it
of the mags, you
back to me.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, the shape design and the angle of the mag look like it'd be similar to a Vector, but it's far from a Vector, isn't it?
Yeah, I was reading the instruction books, but it's nice. Wouldn't have one, but yeah, it's good. But this is going to have the Gen 3 MOSFET and ETU, so this is probably going to be what they're launching the new electronics in when it does come out.
Yeah,
So this was released information was released this week in the newsletter.
Yeah. Apparently it looks like the KWA Ronin.
Don't make me get mine out.
I'm going to say, don't. You're talking to two owners of KWA Ronins here.
Don't irritate the fanboys, Ian. Jesus Christ, I need to talk to these guys.
Speaking of fanboys, have you noticed the amount of Dr. Mouse stuff going on today? We were saying this. Me and Jesus, so I'm not calling him Jesus Soul Hunter, Craig, are wearing the same hoodie.
Call me Jesus. Everyone else does.
Hang on a minute. Just so I don't.
So he's gone from matching Craig to matching Joe. Craig, I'll take that personally, mate. He's
I got things to
Ian says this about your TK45.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Do you really want me to dig that out?
No.
Yeah.
Have you not sold it yet?
No, I think I'm keeping it now.
Oh, come on, sell it. You know you want to.
I don't, because no one's going to pay what I want for it.
Okay. We'll move on to our next topic. So, some of you will have seen the clip. Some of you got involved with the discussion. So, last episode we had a conversation about Chairsofter and some things that have been going on with some of their posts. I actually had a response here. So, bear with me. I'm going to read this out. So, Dear Andy, we were highlighted by some people as well as heard your podcast recently about the page we run, Chairsofter. Post the incident mentioned about Ascension, we've actually changed hands and are now run with a different team. We'd like to again formally apologise on their behalf. The post was done in poor taste and taken wildly out of context. Since then, we have spoken with Luke from Ascension and hope to plan to avoid these kinds of incidents in the near future. Okay, so that's the start. They've owned up. They've held their hands up to that.
Accountability, that's good.
Yeah. It then goes on. We're interested to hear the response from the podcast about the page. The majority of our content comes from our followers submitting it, some with consent, posting things about their mates, etc., others without. A lot of TikTok content is made to be bait, intended as cringe, so we usually will post these at our discretion. We do sometimes find that certain posts don't pass through as we feel it is either inappropriate or will lead to bullying. We have been open since and will always accept if people want their posts taken down, if they feel that things have got too far, or if we feel that attacks are being made maliciously. We aim to look out for hurtful comments, understanding that there is a difference between light jokes and just being a straight-up arsehole. The internet is open and a lot of love and hate can come from content regardless, but we should assure to keep things light and not delve into matters that are taken out of context or are just not appropriate. Unfortunately, that didn't happen with the charity post, and we again apologise for that. We'd be open into chatting in the future with yourself and hope that the page can develop under the fresh team. We thank you for the open discussion on the podcast, as it was helpful to hear the constructive criticism given. All the best, the Chairsofter team. So that's the email.
As far as responses from airsofters go, that is, to be fair, very
it was well mature.
Mature.
Yeah.
They've held themselves accountable, made some changes, and hope to do better. So you can't really ask for a better response. And this is the exact kind of thing that people should really strive to respond like when certain things happen. There are a few points in there that I think could be made better, i.e. we allow people's friends to submit content. How do you identify this person as a friend? How can you confirm it's not just someone being an arsehole to someone they don't like? You can't.
Yeah.
So ideally, it should always be done in conjunction with the content owner.
Yeah.
The TikTok stuff, I kind of get, because the stuff they have posted up from TikTok, usually the people who have posted it have ended up in there in the comments and they really enjoy being the butt of the joke. So obviously they've posted that up knowing it's a bit cringe and knowing that eventually it's
they've done it. They've done it to be satirical and done it just to take the piss out of something else, and they know that they're going to be the butt of the joke and they own up to it and accept it, which is fair enough. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Something I'd highlight is that it wasn't a delayed response. Like, they've heard the feedback and got back to us immediately. It didn't take weeks to try and figure out what to say. It was so that's what makes it.
I have to say that clip went up Tuesday, Wednesday, and this was within hours of the post going live. So I think, Keith, you posted it up at about lunchtime. And it got shared
a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at the insights on that. It reached 2,500 people, pretty much. This is the screenshot from earlier in the week. Yeah, it reached about 2,500 people within a space of about 2 or 3 hours. And I do not have a large Instagram following. I've got about 1,300 people. So it went way beyond mine, and it got shared a couple of dozen times from what I was seeing on people's stories and stuff like that. Yeah. And that was just on my page. You shared it on yours, Andy. You've got a wider reach than I do. You've probably reached out further.
You say that, but I think everyone had already seen it by the time you sent it over.
Yeah, maybe.
It already had the impact. Kelly went out and shared it, for example. Dark Demise, I believe, shared it as well.
Yeah, there was a lot
of the Dark Demise team did, because they've got some reps, and that went out wide. And the T-shirt we're wearing was something that was kind of inspired by people being negative and making certain comments on the internet. The Dark Demise developed this T-shirt in conjunction with Ghosty to kind of say, these people that are spitting hate at us, fuck them. Yeah. So, that's why. But it's nice to see someone go, you know what, we were wrong. We apologise and we'll try and do better. Fair play.
Yeah.
It takes a big person to be able to do that.
We don't want to see
really
all these pages falling apart and going into toxic. That's what I want to see them get better. So, that's the way they're going. That's good, and hopefully others see it and follow suit. The only obvious issue, like Keith was talking about, is the sort of consent thing. It's still a tiny bit of a grey area with some of the stuff, but hopefully they'll nullify it and
because let's be honest, it's on the page. By the time that person said, "I really don't want this up there," the damage has already been done to them.
Yeah.
Their motivation.
By the time they've realised it, people have jumped on it. Like it could take sort of like 2 hours, and then by that time, how many people can have jumped on the post?
Yeah, and this isn't about growing thicker skin or anything like that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go into why I'm saying this, but it's not about pull up your pants, this, that, and the other, act like a man, blah blah blah. That's toxic masculinity you're talking about there.
Yeah.
Where we're being
people
told
just need to be better.
Yeah, I don't want to change my behaviour, so you're just going to have to get tougher. You're going to have to learn to like things you don't like. It's bollocks in it. It's a very narrow-minded and childish way of thinking that. So Cringesoft could have reacted that way. They didn't. They chose to take the right actions, and they're going to show their viewers as a consequence. Their viewers are going to be like, you know what, fair enough. So,
and even as Brad just said with the comment that I had on a moment ago, that he did notice that they seem to have changed their page for the better. So the effects are already being noticed, and the people that don't get it are the cause of the problem rather than the solution. There were some comments made after that. We're not going to go into the details of the ins and outs of them because they were reacted to. Quite frankly, that guy can go suck a dick.
Yeah.
If you then start going out saying, "Oh, people might start crying over it," or they're woke justice warriors and things, that's the people that are in the wrong. That's
they're the ones that cause the most damage.
For the racists, the misogynists, all the people and anyone that gets called out for wrongdoing for any reason will just refer to you as a woke justice warrior, and they are the problem.
Yeah. Not wanting to debate it, they just want to go off with their,
I could think of a certain YouTuber who will remain nameless on this show who would just refer to everyone as that.
There's a post on my Instagram of me doing a fantastic impression of him. Do you remember Andy?
Yeah.
Once upon a time, that.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. It was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
That. Isn't it something famous, is it?
No.
Yeah, no. Well, not for the right reasons, anyway. But that's another story for another day.
It is.
And it also kind of brings us on to our next point, which is playing by the rules, understanding the impact of your behaviour at game sites. So there were two incidents that came out with this. The first one that Keith was a witness to, and it was a bit of a shit show. The second one... In fact, we're going to the second one first because we can speak about this. So there were some videos posted up on a site group the other day of a guy at a site, and he was cheat calling, which is against all the rules in the game anyway. At this site, he says if you've got a problem, you speak to a marshal. You're not there to cheat call. That's the marshal's job, which is quite right. he was yeeting TRMRs at head height to the extent that a guy walked around the corner, and if he'd have been stood up a little bit more, that would have taken his head off, clean off. It would have been a whole different story. That thing would have exploded. And yeah, it could have been a whole different story, and someone could have got seriously hurt. And basically, it got to the point where the site owner commented on the video and said, "I'm leaving this up just to show you how not to play the game." That's the only reason that video is still there. But he's looked at all the comments on it. What was that, Keith? I didn't read that.
Just I could do that too.
Yeah. Hold on.
I just saw a screen, but yeah, no. It was basically, I've noticed it for a few years now. Some people put a GoPro on their head and think that the rules don't apply to them at a game day. It's the only way I can describe it. I'm saying this because we've got the other instance of this coming up in the conversation as well. Yeah. But there are some people that will just put on a GoPro, or they might be live streaming at an event and then breaking the rules as well. That's been known to happen in the past, where an individual was dead man filming a game and then telling his mates that people were behind him and things like that. I'm sure we all remember that one.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's two sides of it. So you've got the ones that will just break all the rules, and at the end of the day, how long is it going to be before someone gets seriously hurt by these people? The individual that was at the game filming actually also filmed himself breaking the rules at the jail. A few people in the group chat I was in at the time kicked off about it. So I sort of said, right, okay, look, I'll have a chat with him. I know the guy. Let me have a chat with him, and I'll just sort of advise him. So, like, potentially he can just sort of make a slight adjustment to the video just to take these bits out, because, there were people launching TRMR's head height down staircases and things like that. Literally just go down a staircase. That's asking for trouble any day of the week.
It hurts. I've taken an Oshi boom to the chest as I ran around the corner before now. Twice, actually. I took one to the inside of the knee, but the one in the chest just dropped me. Yeah. They hurt.
Adam and Ely are watching as well.
No. So that way you haven't been hit by a grenade, Keith.
Well, I've seen a guy, literally, someone launched one down a corridor and he was laying down. It was his own fault for laying down, and he admitted it, but it hit his RIF and went off. Ooh. An impact grenade went off, and I think they had a mag flash in as well, so he was a little bit shocked, to say the least.
Yeah, I think the grenade throwing side of things, that's just basic safety and having that consciousness around you. I'm hurling a piece of metal down a corridor.
Yeah.
What shouldn't I be doing in this situation? And the answer to that is making sure it can't hit someone in the face. The cheat calling one is the big one, because that is something that can't just injure somebody. It can change the mood of the entire day across the entire site.
Very easily.
Very easily, yeah. And a lot of places I know will say, we will take cheat calling more seriously than non-hit taking, because non-hit taking can impact one person, whereas cheat calling, somebody will overhear you. They'll think, oh, that guy over there's not taking the hits. And then they'll tell their other friends, they'll start taking pot shots. They'll probably miss, but in the back of their mind, that guy said that he wasn't taking hits, so he must not be taking my hits. And then they'll tell their friends, and you just see, the mood across the site just go during the day. And then everyone gets arsey and cranky. There's overshooting starting to happen, arguments, blah, blah, blah. So, somebody may not be cheating, but that cheat calling can just change a positive mindset into a negative one. Yeah. And we know if you go into an airsoft game with a negative mindset, it's probably not going to be a great day for you and those around you. Yeah. So that's a big one. Which kind of leads into what happened with Kelly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention the site. The site's amazing.
the site dealt with it really well. Hearing what happened, they dealt with it absolutely spot on.
They did. You can't knock the site. But essentially what happened was it's a very dark site. It's a CQB site. The person who was having a go at Kelly, basically two people ran into a room. She shot them both. One of them walked up, squared up to her and started screaming in her face, "You better start feeling your hits." And then before she could respond, he just had a Paddy and stormed off. Surprise, surprise. And then she went and calmed down a bit. But this is a guy who, in a very dark site, was shooting a rifle with no torch. So there's no real validation of your hits in a situation like that. There's no guarantee. And I was in the next room because I heard the commotion. And I've seen Kelly at this game, walking back and forth from regen. Probably within the first 10 minutes of play, I must have seen her go back and forth about 6 times. There was no way she was not calling hits, because you don't walk back and forth like that if you're skipping your hits. She also had a GoPro on, filming footage, so she doesn't want to be caught out hit taking. And as she said, Airsoft puts money in her pocket. It's her job. So what she doesn't want to do is get called out for negative behaviour like cheating, because that can ruin her career. She's got a lot more at stake than most of us when it goes to recording and the behaviour she portrays at Airsoft games. This guy, however, started cheat calling, went off, started mouthing off to a bunch of people. There was quite a few people yeeted that night for either cheat calling or overshooting, because obviously when you start cheat calling, people start to put a few extra BBs into their opponents because they think that hit might not be taken, so we'll just make sure that they do. Absolutely. And it did indeed happen to some hot-headed confrontations, Ian. Absolutely right, mate. But yeah, it's difficult to be around that. But also there's that aggression towards it. And I'm not going to say a female or male. I'm not going to bring sex into this. But showing aggression because of your suspicions of somebody breaking the rules at an airsoft game like that and getting in someone's face, bang out of order. You go into a hobby. You're playing with toy guns. You know what I mean? Just understand in the back of your mind that you're not, Navy SEAL sniper. You can miss. We all miss. I've missed at 3 feet before now. You're not faultless in this, and you need to accept that sometimes, what you think might be happening isn't necessarily happening. So, this is apt for the t-shirt. People acting like that, fuck them.
Yeah.
But remember
it's
that
also,
what you do has a consequence.
Yeah. It's also, I'm just going to go anecdotal here because I'm going back to the Sandpit UCAP years ago. Great site, very good site they had there. We went down and there was a guy that was a bit suspect. So my mate was shooting away in his direction and it looked like he hit him. So he said, I think I hit you there. He came out and he said, I think I hit you there, just to let you know. The guy then got right up in his face. Now, bearing in mind at the time, this guy was only 17, 18, and the bloke that was squaring up to him right in his face was probably 40s, 50s. But then you had the other side of it, where the site you're talking about here, Keith, dealt with it absolutely superbly and did the right thing. The UCAP incident, it was a regular player, so the site owner took his side and didn't warrant it. Now, when you've got a 17-year-old lad being offered out by a 50-year-old, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Something wrong with the morals there, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the Sandpit was one of those sites. Lenny's joined in, evening Lenny. She said she misses the Sandpit days. The trouble with the Sandpit, it was one of those sites you'd either have an amazing day or a shit day. And there was no in between. It was either a really good day, and you'd have some really good days, and you'd go sometimes, and it'd be like, "What the fuck have I wasted my money here for?"
Yeah, I remember was Sandpit the place that banned two-tones?
Yeah, UCAP banned two-tones.
They didn't mind people playing with like the femme fatale rifles, where it was like half, brightly coloured and stuff like that. They just didn't want the immersion ruining. This is way back when I was writing reviews for No Nonsense. I brought up a discussion about that without having all the facts. I was at fault. And I wrote a post saying, I object to sites banning two-tones, it stinks of elitism, and blah, blah, blah. And then people were saying, there's still people running around with black and pink rifles. They're blasting each other to shit. It's one of those things. I just didn't do my research. I was a bit of an idiot for posting it in the first place. Yeah. But, yeah, the defence from the regulars was what made me turn around, delete the post, and put up an apology for that. You know, I'll hold my hands up when I make a mistake. Not got a problem for it. It's how we're learning it. We get better by owning our mistakes. But yeah, it seemed to be one of those places that's got a real kind of good customer base, regular customer base.
Yeah, they've got a regular customer base.
Is it still open? I'm guessing not.
Sandpit's long gone. He's got other sites now. In fact, UCAP was where the whole documentary series from Craig began, where he takes his documentary photos of me. It was at the opening day of, is it Vendetta in Gloucester?
It was Vendetta, yeah. And what a hilarious day that was.
Yeah, that's where the whole documentary series that he started about me, at every game day he gets a stupid photo, and that's where that all began.
Yeah.
Brad's saying what a great day as well, so I'm guessing Brad was there long before I actually knew him.
Yes, he was indeed. There's a few people knocking about that day.
Yeah. Lenny's come back and said the best airsoft days are the private days. Everyone that gets invited tends to play the games as they are intended with honesty. I've had some amazing private games.
Yeah, I'd go about 80% on that. You can still have some masterful fuck ups, like with just some. The thing, fucking keep laughing. The thing is, like, I'm
not saying
the more people are familiar with each other, right? I just feel like sometimes that it's more room to, like, if I'm shooting a mate, for example, like if I shoot him like 5 or 6 more times for a laugh, and he takes that and he's getting pissed off, whatever, and I'm just doing it for a laugh. Other people see that in the game, and the same thing as Keith was saying, it can snowball in the same way. But it's definitely better for the atmosphere, like pre-game, post-game, a lot more focus, I'd say, on the actual playing rather than fucking about.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on this, Craig, Ben?
I love private game days. Went to one a couple of months back with a friend who invited me. I didn't know, I only knew like 3 people there. One of the best game days I've had. Literally just ran around with a knife at people, and it was great.
Bring back the crucifix.
No, it's too unwieldy.
So, for those who don't know, just before we go into the main topic of discussion today, on to Ben, because he's sitting there looking like he's getting lost with all this. The crucifix, Craig, when he was Jesus, decided that he was going to tape a knife to an axe and then run around.
It was Ross's idea. I'm going to Ross. He just like cable tied it together and was just like, there you go. I was like, I'll do.
Yeah. Was this with the cable ties that he used to have his bolt cutters with?
I think so, yeah.
I love Ross, but those bolt cutters were so unwieldy. Right, okay.
It's time
to move on to the main topic.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, just to chime in on the private event thing, the different sites and that. I found that I've never actually been to a full private event game, so I can't really comment on the private event side of things, but I've been to an awful lot of standard airsoft games, and it definitely depends on who's at that site that day. Depends on how the site game runs, and I definitely think it would it'd be the same for an event or a private event that's being booked by someone for friends or whatever. I think it depends on who's actually attending that game and their mindset, especially the mindset on the day, because I've heard of private events where people set their own little rules that wouldn't normally exist in normal events. And there's a CQB site not far from me where I know that private events are held there, and the person who hosts a private event at that site has particular rules to do with like shotguns and things like that most sites wouldn't normally sort of do. So I think it depends on who would be hosting the private game, and I definitely think it depends on who's attending any airsoft game on that day. It depends on how your game will run. And going back a little bit to the point about cheat calling and stuff like that, I went to Anzio for the very first time a few weeks back, and the day was absolutely amazing. And I've been told a lot of mixed reviews about Anzio, how it plays, the rules, things like that. And I had to go into it with a completely open mind, because I thought, well, I don't know the site. I know first and only games and their different sites, and I've generally had good experiences. But couple of bad experiences, but we'll go into them separately. And the game was absolutely amazing. It was fantastic. Everyone played really well. The games were managed brilliantly, and it was a proper hats off to Amy, who currently manages your site. It was fantastic. The second time round that I went, I didn't have quite as good as a good day, and that comes back to people coming back to cheat calling and things like that. We had a couple of players on the opposite team, and it was consistent throughout the day. They were shouting across the site, like really raging about things. A lot of them were trying to rile their team players to move on objectives and stuff like that, which is fine. But they were getting really aggressive, and the cheat calling was getting really aggressive. And I had to step back for 5 minutes because I got a bit angry myself at someone. And then when I come to from like this little haze, I thought, Christ, I've had to step back here and think I need to take 5 minutes, have a little breather, have a word with the site manager and say, right, look, this is happening. I don't know whether anyone's brought it to your attention before, but this is happening. I think people are getting a little bit annoyed and stuff like that. And it was handled great. And the person who was doing it come up to me separately throughout the day and shook me and said, look, at the moment and that, really sorry, we'll move on. And I was like, yeah, great, fine. As long as you own that and you agree that you've took it a step too far, fine. You own that.
Again,
that's great. And
all about accountability, isn't it?
Yeah,
hold yourself to
accountability.
Hold yourself to your own actions, yeah.
All right, I think we'll move on to the topic. Bear with us because we're just dealing. We've not got the best of lines at the moment with Ben, but we'll push on regardless and see how we get on. It's a little bit broken at times at the moment, I'm noticing with the sound. So we'll push on and we'll see how we get on. Yeah, over to Opies Airsoft and Ben. So just to start, by the way, when we get onto the images, let us know which one you want me to call up, and I'll call up the right one because I've got them all saved. So, first off,
some of them are a bit confusing.
Yeah, if we go into where Opies Airsoft began, and we'll go from there.
Yes. So when I started Airsoft, and like most other people, you started with a lot of basic equipment, and so I started with a pretty standard AEG. It was an SRC G36. Keith has seen the latest addition to that, and it's pretty peculiar, I must admit. There'll be more images of that released on socials as time goes on and stuff like that. So I started very basic, like most people did, and then natural progression through Airsoft. You start looking at more upgrades in your rifles, things like that. And one of the routes I was considering at the time was going into like high-end AGs or looking into this HPA route. So I did a lot of research on it and thought, well, you know, everyone goes down the high-end AG route, so why not something different? And my background personally from a work perspective is engineering, so having this kind of electromechanical system in one of my rifles, to me was like quite interesting. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll have a bit of that, and just dove headfirst into it. And to be honest, I never looked back.
Cool, yeah, so... one thing that Keith brought you up to me a lot about, we'll get it done and out of the way because it's going to get quite in depth because it gets quite scientific, is the thing around dual creep and sort of the misunderstandings around that.
I'd say the mass misunderstandings from both player and the site level on that one.
Yeah, I've seen some sites that will say they worry about dual creep and then they just chrono you on a 0.2 and say, yeah, you're all right.
Yeah, so if we go back to a sort of like a legal standpoint on that, if we look at the Firearms Control Act and stuff like that, if you look at the Section 57 that specifically mentions airsoft replicas and that, the limits that the legislation refers to are all in joules. So why does almost every site in the country test in FPS? And it's one of the things I really wanted to look into, because there's obviously a reason why sites are looking at FPS and why the legislation says to test in joules. And it all comes down to something called kinetic energy. And the point is, the BB has a mass. Now, for us looking at a BB bottle, you see 0.2 gram, 0.3 gram, you think, well, there's next to nothing in it, but we can see the actual differences different weights of BBs have in replicas when you're playing at site. You're using a 0.2, you know for a fact that if you're in an open windy day, you're going to get no shots in at all. But if you're using a 0.32 gram, you're going to get shots in. There's a scientific reason why that happens. But more specifically, going back to the whole kinetic energy thing, the difference in the weight in them BBs has an physical impact, literally, on the person that it hits. And it's all to do with that weight.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so you did send me a little calculation on this.
Yeah,
it's getting very scientific, so bear with us. We're going back to sort of secondary school here, really, aren't we? Actually, looking at the calculation.
I'm going to try and simplify it as best as I can, but
I was going to say you're sort of going back to sort of GCSE and physics here, aren't you? So this is the first one you sent me.
Yeah. So right, this is the what you see at the top there. It says. Sorry, because I'm looking on my phone, it's quite small, so I'm going to look.
Yeah.
So it's the equation to calculate kinetic energy, KE equals 1/2 mv2.
Yeah, so half mv squared.
Mass, I'm guessing that's mass and velocity squared, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, so
it's got underneath M equals mass.
In the bottom there. Yeah. So, obviously, kinetic energy, so K is kinetic energy. We want to work out the kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is calculated by half of your mass multiplied by the velocity squared. Mass is weight, velocity is speed. We want half of the mass multiplied by velocity squared. So the velocity being the speed, you multiply it by itself to get the squared value. And that's how we can calculate kinetic energy. And the main point to do with joules and joule creep is when we're testing replicas at sites. Now, there's very, very few sites I've been to anymore that will test on a 0.2 gram BB. Almost all the sites I go to now will test on the weight you use, which to a certain point is okay, but when you're not factoring the actual volumetric effect of your replica on the weight of that BB, it depends on what your joule output is. And to put it into perspective, it's let's take a 0.2 gram BB as a ping pong ball, and we'll take a 0.3 gram BB as a brick. You throw both of them at the same speed, your ping pong ball is not going to hurt someone, your brick is going to hurt someone, and that's as basic as you can get to say, well, the difference between a 0.2 gram and a 0.3 gram is that physical difference. And the kinetic energy relates directly to the difference in weight between the ping pong ball and the brick. So why does joules come into?
Yeah. So I was going to say, this is where you see the differences in the hits, where say a 0.25 gram, someone will come away with a bit of a welt on their arm, and that'll be it. And if they've been hit by a 3.2, I mean, I've seen people pushing them out of their noses before because they've been hit at close range by something, and it's obviously it's going to be down to the energy behind that. There's no reason otherwise why it's going to go through someone's skin compared to another.
Yeah. So this is the thing as well. People, when you talk about joules and stuff like that, the joule limit is always the same because you're taking the weight of that BB, and you have to change the speed of that BB to be within a certain limit of joules, and it's a calculation between the mass and the speed that gives you the joule output. So if you're let's talk in HPA terms just a little bit for a sec. When I set up one of my rifles, I will change the settings of my FCU to volume the barrel correctly. Now, if I under-volume my barrel, I will not get the same kinetic energy transfer as if I volume my barrel correctly. So it all depends on like the volumetric side and stuff like that as well. I'm trying to put it in as simple terms as possible, and it's quite hard to put down without going through a lot of the technical details into the science side of it. And I suppose that really relates.
I think it essentially boils down to we shouldn't really be looking at FPS limits to meet requirements on site. Ideally, everything should be joules and calculated in that way. But we've got a bit of an archaic system in the UK when it comes to chronoing in the mornings, haven't we? So
I was going to say a lot of this really seems to go back to before the Police and Crime Act came in, when this all changed. and it's actually got defined a bit more, because before it used to just be sort of like the laws only really focused on the rules around two-tones and riffs and imitation firearms and all that, and then back in, I'm trying to remember what year it was. Was it 2018, 2017, something like that, when the Police and Crime Act came in?
Yeah, 2016, 2017.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what came first, Brexit or the PCB. But when it came in, all of a sudden there was actually legal limits assigned to the power that could come out of your rifle. And that is defined in joules as well. So from memory, it was about 1.3 joules for a fully automatic rifle. Yeah, and 2.5 for single shot bolt action. Yeah. So a lot of us, 90% of us, I'd say, would fall into the 1.3 joule category.
The 2.5 joule category only relates to sniper rolls, basically.
Yeah. Because I remember having a lot of debates about this as well, because there was a massive misunderstanding around what the law actually entailed. And it was sort of like, oh, but it's okay because I fall within, like, if it goes over, people were like, oh, it doesn't matter anyway. But no, it does, because I had the discussion with the guys at UCAP, who great organisation to sign up to, by the way, UCAP, who can't shout out enough about them. The amount of help they give airsofters that do find themselves in a spot of bother is second to none. And it's guys like those that will fight our case. Matt Fury King, specifically, when he was in charge, used to be going over to Brussels on a daily basis when they were trying to ban airsoft throughout Europe and things like that. So, like, he's one of the ones that started it all and did a lot. But the guys there actually explained, like, no, actually, if you go above that 1.3 joules, it gets classed as an air rifle. Fully automatic air rifles are outlawed. Therefore, you could face a serious stint. I think it worked out about 5 years you could face in jail for that.
Just out of curiosity, I've just taken the headphones out to see if it's a better line on the audio.
It's still breaking in and out at the moment, buddy.
We can understand you. There's just some noise that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit robot-y at the moment. It's sort of a little bit broken every now and again, but we'll push through. We shall
power through.
Yeah, if it gets too bad, we'll just ask you to drop off and join back in again. Yeah.
So, yeah. For a little bit of context on what's on the screen at the minute as well, I've put an example on there about how you would use this calculation to calculate what joule output you're using and stuff. So, most people don't use a 2.2 gram BB anymore. So I use a 3 as a sort of general rule of thumb there. The problem is with this calculator, and that is the actual equation is hard to input data into if you use like your phone or something. So I simplified it in a way that you can put it into your smartphone calculator, and you can calculate what your joule output would be based on the weight that you're using at that site's recommended FPS. But the problem we've got is with this equation is the velocity has to be worked out in meters per second, whereas obviously we use feet per second. So there's another conversion chart that's sent to Andy there, and it's a conversion chart between meters per second and feet per second. So if you go to a normal site, they will have sort of like a generic set of FPS rules in that. So on that chart there's two sets of conversions. One of them is 1.3 joules is what we see defined in the legislation as the absolute maximum limit. Almost no sites have anything to do with this apart from like Milsims, they'll push up to this. But most generic sites will use the bottom chart, and it's sort of a simpler and safer set of FPS that sites have used for donkey's years. That they developed it themselves over years and years to say, well, this is safer because we're shooting at a slower velocity. And you say, well, yep, that is sort of right, but you still got to factor in the weight of your BP as well to make sure that people still aren't overshooting. And dual creep comes from when your rifle's set up, however it's set up, and you chrono on a 0.2 BB. Your system is set up for that weight of BB only. If you then change the weight of the BB to a much heavier weight, what happens is the air from your cylinder or your HPA unit or whatever it is will still be delivered the same in the barrel, but a heavyweight BB will take longer to travel through the barrel, meaning it gains more kinetic energy. It gains more kinetic energy throughout the barrel because it spends longer under that defined pressure. And I think one of the things that sites sort of get confused about is saying, well, at what point does the BB stop being put under the pressure and this, that, and the other? And the simplest answer is, as soon as it leaves the barrel, it's no longer under pressure, it's under force. It's got no more energy from the supply, if you will. So it will only ever get what it gets. So this is why it's for ages it's hard to define how to set up a rifle and stuff for setting dual limits. Unless you've got a quick change spring and stuff like that, you can change your spring and your piston and all that kind of stuff to correctly volume your cylinder for your barrel and the weight you're using. For HPA, it's a lot easier. You can just change the regulator, drop your pressure down, and then you're away. You can change the volumetric pressure for your barrel, which will inherently change whether you shoot your BBs faster or slower for that weight.
Yeah, there's a lot of caveats that sites don't really think about as well. For example, if somebody's using a DMR and it's got a foot-long suppressor set on the end of it, the actual speed of that BB is not what's coming out the end of the suppressor, it's what's coming out the end of the rifle, but they never count that in. So they'll be super uptight on HPA saying you must have tournament lock, this, that, and the other. There's no way to lock a suppressor onto a rifle, unfortunately. So you could be, potentially, because of the rate of deceleration, you could be 10, 15 FPS over limit using a suppressor. And at the end of that suppressor, you'd actually look like you're within limits, but your rifle could still be hot. Yeah. And there's nothing stopping someone from just popping that suppressor off halfway through a day, especially if you're using like a Trilog or something like that, where it just twists off, just done, things like that. So there's looking at the equation, looking at the equation side of things, I can understand why sites are trying to keep it simple from themselves. Yeah. Because it'd take a bit of work to do that, and a bit of extra training, bit of extra understanding. But is it something we really should be doing?
The length of time it would take for them to chrono every single person on site if they made sure that they were using exactly the right weight BBs, the suppressors on the rifles, things like that. There's a lot of time
involved.
And a lot of it comes down to trust from site as well.
Well, this is it. At the end of the day, it goes down to the site owners trusting the players to play within the rules that are laid down. And when you do get the people that get caught out with the random chronoing throughout the day as well, the spot chronos that you see at some sites, but not every site does that. Some people will cheat the chrono, and then they'll go in. It did make. I have to agree though. You did say about these much safer site limits. Having played at 350 sites for most of my life, when I went to the States and played Kev's event, the big surprise of the century, they obviously use slightly higher limits, and it is noticeable in the CQB environment. The welts that I came with, I was like, I would never get this in the UK at a CQB site. And I've had some horrendous welts over here, but out there was just something else. So,
well, the site that I mentioned before that I haven't actually made, High Command it is, you very rarely get shot from more than 10 feet away.
Yeah.
And every time I go there, I come away bleeding. Like, literally bleeding. I've actually got scars coming away from that site. Just because at 10 feet, it doesn't matter if it's 350 or 370, you're getting cut. You know? It's always likely to happen. But yeah, I can't imagine bumping it up by 50 FPS in the States. Yeah, I can imagine that gets
it wasn't even 50, it was only sort of like 15, 20 FPS. But that difference is the difference that you see.
Because that's what people will be aiming for, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't leave to man up.
I just seen that comment come up.
Haley, what?
Yeah.
I think that might have been Adam.
It probably is Adam, if I'm being completely honest.
Andy could probably. The depot was.
I'll forgive them. They're on my team, so you know I'll let that slide just once. Keeps it lightweight. What?
Sorry, Joe. What were you saying about the
thin
depot?
skin. I can't help it, you know.
The being shot from 10 feet away, like that was pretty much like the depot. It was so tight. So I know the difference between like a .2 and a .25 at close range.
Yeah.
Like, I just know the feeling, even in the worst spots. Like, oh, that was a 2.5. Or and sometimes I've thought, oh, that's definitely got to be a 2.8. And I used to marshal it like a while ago now. I'd instantly like, nah, I need to go check that guy.
It's like, the same with the JL, isn't it, Craig? You're very lucky sometimes if your engagement is 6 feet away.
Yeah, I accidentally shot a guy point blank because he literally just walked like straight past me as I was about to go and get his mate. And I literally just turned around and was like, "Pop, sorry, mate." And then he was like, "No, you should have surrendered." I was like, "No, it was an accident. Calm down. I didn't mean to shoot you. It was just reflex."
This is the thing, though, as well. Like some sites, you have surrender rules and that, but some people will just instinctively react and go, "Ugh," and shoot you at point blank, and it's like. What they've tried to do with these site limits, I find, is that they've tried to keep it at a level where if you do have the point blank, it isn't going to do some serious damage.
And Tuddenham, that game Tuddenham, Andy, like I dropped a tremor through a window, like to outside, and as I put my hand out, I get shot in the finger, and the barrel was like millimeters away from my hand.
Yeah,
and I dropped a tremor because of it, so I killed everybody in the building. But
I forgot about that. I remember you killing everyone.
I had gloves on, and I thought I broke my finger. I took my glove off, and I checked, and I was like, fucking hell. And that was like a pistol. It's one of those things, it's like, oh, shit, man.
I find in, like, extreme CQB, kind of sometimes logic falls out of the window completely with players because they're that panicked about how close people are, make some terrible decisions. Like, not the last game I played at High Command the time before, I ran into a room with my pistol, and then I realised that my slide was locked back as I found somebody stood right in front of me in a corner. And I didn't know what to do. And the only thing in my mind was I said to him, and I literally said this, I went, "You've got until I put a new mag in to surrender." And I started changing my mag on my pistol. But yeah, fair enough. And then walked off. I'm like, how did that work? Like, but I was just like, I'm taking myself out for that one. That was just a dirty move. But there's no logic. They didn't think through what I was saying. They just went, "Okay, yeah, I'll take that."
There's somebody's got a drop on them.
Yeah, it was funny. It is really funny. You get some of the best situations at CQB.
Yeah. Anyway, getting back on topic to this, you were talking about HPA. Do you think that HPA's got a unnecessarily bad rep because of this sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Because earlier on, when HPA first came out, a lot of people would sort of like, you know, because you can turn your regulator up and increase your FPS at like an almost a moment's notice and that, people would automatically assume that because people were getting shot by someone using HPA, that they were cheating, and it's not the case. One of the reasons why I went to HPA alongside just being an absolute geek most of the time is the efficiency, well, not necessarily efficiency, but more the consistency from it. I know a lot of people, they have like good quality AG builds and you get good consistency, but for me it was a better option to go down for consistency. Now with HPA, you're getting multiple shots on target without having to spend however many Bs you would otherwise. So, you know, you get a lot of people who say because you've had more consecutive hits on target, you get called out and say, "Well, you must be cheating, or it must be running at higher FPS and stuff," which inherently snowballs out of control. And then HPA just gets an absolutely enormous, huge rep about being unsafe. It's always running hot to the people who use HPA and absolute cheaters and things like that, and it's just not the case. Based off of a site's new rules around HPA, you know, people are being more hot on the fact that you've got to use different limits for BBs at different sites and stuff like that. And HPA being the instigator of all evil in Airsoft, apparently, that HPA now have their own rules. For what reason, I don't know, because we all use the same propellant system, which is air, compressed air. We all use the same BBs, and at the end of the day, we're still all using toy guns. So what's the difference between 1.3 joules out of an AG rifle and 1.3 joules out of a HPA rifle? And it purely comes down to consistency. And I think it's the misunderstanding of how consistent HPA can be that people put a bad reputation on it.
Yeah, because some sites will say 328 with a variance. The problem is they're giving that variance because of inconsistencies with rifles. So HPA, for being more consistent than AGs, is getting handicapped. Whereas when you get the high-end AGs, I mean, I've put a lot of money into mine, and the FPS variance that I get is usually around 3 FPS, which is quite similar to HPA. However, I can go up to 350, whereas you can't, so no.
Yeah. It's the same sort of like
no way to find the piece.
It's the same sort of thing as well. Like most of my rifles run plus or minus 2 or 3 FPS as well. I don't get really stuck on like making sure I've got 1 FPS tolerance on anything like that, because there's no point, like I said, most of the time, as long as you've got a couple of FPS tolerance, you shoot pretty well and stuff. And it's like I say, it's exactly the same as high-end AEG builds. You put the time and effort into that, and you get it firing really consistently and really efficiently. That's great. HPA is exactly the same. You could argue that it's a little bit like where you can buy your way into the thing, but high-end AGs are exactly the same. It costs an awful lot of money to ship out, a perfectly working system from a Japanese company, to put a load of aftermarket parts into it. You're talking thousands of pounds in some cases, and HPA is exactly the same. So there's no real difference between a super high-end build AG and a very well tuned and defined HPA build.
Yeah, Rob Scott's come up with this. HPA always gets a mad rep, and it just comes down to jealousy. It's more consistent, and we don't need the extra FPS.
Jealousy with a capital J.
I agree. Consistency is the biggest, or I'd say the most important thing with any rifle that we use in an airsoft. Because if your FPS is jumping up and down by plus or minus 20, then your grouping is going to expand. And the best thing you can do is get consistent shots through a gap like this at X distance. Because if your FPS goes up 20, then obviously your hot rub will get more spin on that, and you'll sky that, and it'll get further, but it won't necessarily be landing where you want it to. Your shots aren't going to be landing where you've zeroed your red dot or your scope to, things like that. So consistency is one of the most important things, alongside synergy, I think, with when you're building an airsoft rifle. It should be what you're aiming for, not high FPS, but consistent FPS, because that way you know where your BBs are going to land then. This is the thing. The amount of times I've seen on the Facebook groups people who go, right, what can I do to get my RIF up to the highest FPS I can? Like they always aim for the maximum FPS you can have at the site. They always go, how can I get this at 350? How can I get this at 350? And you're like, but that's not what you're after. Getting it to 350 is one thing, but you want to be consistently hitting a target at a distance at 350. I always, personally, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to try and get 20 FPS lower than the site limits. Because, some site limits are low as well. Is what I generally aim for.
I'll go for 330 because I know a lot of sites you'll get in with the 330.
My first gun was one of the G&G models. It was one of those electric blowback models, and I got the Titan and I had it upgraded. And I think I was sitting about 330, and that was on 0.2s.
Yeah.
So, and that was super consistent. Well, like with FPS, it was super consistent. The shots were like it was made for CQB, so it wasn't made for range, but it was super consistent for where I was playing.
Yeah, I think we've all known an airsoft at some point that said, I've upgraded my gun, it's got a bigger spring. That's all right.
Some people that will change their spring-powered rifles out and they'll change the springs because it's got a quick change system.
We've got to be fair, we've got all sorts of stuff going on. We've got, KWA's have got the VPS Modify have got a VPS. The majority of rifles released over the last 3 years have got a QD spring change. You know, gas blowbacks, they've got the restrictor hinges on, but we've got about 560 different types of bleeding gas. And each coloured gas gives a specific 2 times, 3 times, 4 times power of standard green gas or whatever, and things like that. The amount of possibilities for exponential power at our fingertips has increased over the last few years. And I don't think we should be as finicky on what type of engine is spitting out that speed more than is this player within limits. You know, I don't think we should put one thing standing out more than others.
Rob, again, in there, I've had people in the past slating HPA and who've never used it. Once they've used it, they love it and never look back.
Yeah.
To be fair, I've used HPA. I had a great day playing with it, but at the moment, I just couldn't justify the cost of changing everything over. I've got my guns, I've got them set up how I want them. Why am I going to spend money on another one? And especially at the moment with the cost of everything else going up, you know, it's not worth spending the money on a RIF, on a HPA RIF. I'll just use what I've got at the moment. If something goes wrong with it, I'll go get it fixed, and that's it.
Yeah, I like a little bit of feedback when I pull a trigger, and that's my only gripe with it. HPA. Me and Ben spoke about it length in regards to the Kythera that's been released, because that's got a mechanical trigger mechanism. So you feel like you're actually pulling a trigger rather than you're pulling something. Yeah. It feels sometimes like you feel like you're playing with a mouse button, and you can barely understand when a BB leaves your barrel. And that's a gripe with me, because I use a lot of kind of recoil stuff and things like that.
I mean, I'm the same, because I grew up shooting real steel for years and years and years. And the guys who know me know that every time I go to the States, I try and find a range nearby so I can go keep that up, because you can't over here really. And for me personally, the minute I pull that trigger, I want that feeling in my shoulder, which is why I use a lot of recoil systems as well, because I want that feeling in my shoulder that something's happened the minute I pull that trigger. It's just what I'm used to. And for me, getting used to HPA, it was just so bizarre, the fact that I pulled the trigger and then BB's gone, but nothing's happened really. You just hear this still, and that's it.
Yeah, it's what and Craig will argue. Sorry, Craig will argue with me on this one. It's why I got rid of my Evo, because it was a very quiet running gearbox, and there wasn't much response that you got from it. It felt very clinical. I understand with HPA, I can definitely see the allure of pulling a trigger and you barely knowing there's been a BB release, because the whole process is so quiet. And I can see a massive advantage in that, and I can see the draw that people want. You know, if you're in a bush and you can shoot somebody who's 5-10 feet away and they would not know where that BB's come from, that would be a buzz. But I don't know, I've just become addicted to feedback from what I'm using. It's almost like an airsoft rifle has a soul. But if I don't understand the BB's coming out, if I haven't got that feedback, that immersion drops and it feels a little too clinical.
I think the main thing is everyone knows what they want. Yeah. Everyone knows what they want from an airsoft gun.
I'll be 2 seconds, by the way, sorry.
And that's cool. Everyone knows what they want from an airsoft gun, so they'll just get what works best for them. So you might get a HPA because you want that consistency, or like me, you might get the recoil because you want that recoil system. Or you might get an Evo like Craig because you want to be the butt of the jokes in the safety brief at the jail.
I only want to get HPA so I can just be really quiet and no one will know where I am. And I'll be like, this is great.
What you mean, even quiet?
There's a lot of different strokes for different folks, and it comes down to like personal preferences, what you're used to, what someone else is used to. I went down the route with HPA because I could see the advantage for being extremely quiet in certain situations. I could see the advantage of getting a lot more consistent shots rather than putting a lot of money into a high-end AG build. So it was literally 50-50 for me which one I was going to go down, and it just happened to say route A over route B.
Which is fair. Which is completely fair. Way to go about it.
Mine just literally, I don't have the energy to carry a bottle about. But
I think that's the other thing that puts a lot of people off as well, is the whole the hose and the
have
bottle.
The energy to wear a rig that probably weighs about between 3 and 5 kilo, depending if I get my water bladder filled up. But no,
that is a valid point as well, though, Joe. People don't want to carry those bottles around on their back. I found a lot of people find that it will ruin the image for them and that. And I know you had, who was it? Polar Star, and I think Tipman did a system as well with the bottles and the stocks.
Yeah.
Oh, I was trying that.
But it never really sort of seemed to take off too much.
Well, I mean, Polar Stars and both Wolverine and Polar Star have taken it a step further, and they've got CO2 capsule systems that run in a buffer tube. So you'd look at the rifle and you think it was an AJ because the buffer tube is converted to run the CO2 stocks. So they're a good little option, but obviously you get your drawbacks from having CO2 bulbs, having to carry them around for one, and how many shots per bulb you get. The argument I have with the tanker line is the tank itself, you don't really feel it. As long as you've got your carrier or your chest rig and your backpack set up well, you don't notice that way. You don't want it lobbing about in your backpack like you wouldn't want a water bladder throwing around in your backpack. So you're going to feel that, and it's going to affect you when you're running around. The HP tank's exactly the same. Like I have mine stuffed in the pocket of my backpack, and I put stuff out the side of it if I need to and feel like it's wobbling about. You don't notice it running around, even rolling around on the floor and through bushes. You don't even notice it. The only hang up that I can agree with people in is the line. The line can be a bit of a nuisance from time to time. I mean, I run mine over my shoulder on my plate carrier, so it's all tucked away, and I run quite a short line up to my rifle from out of the shoulder pad on my carrier. So I don't notice it as much because I generally tend to keep my rifle quite close to me. I don't extend myself out a lot. So for me, it's not an issue, but I can see why other people would have an issue with it, especially when you've got the process of, say, if you want to throw a grenade into a room or something, realistically, to get a good arm on something, you'd have to put your rifle down, take your nade out, and then throw it. But for me, I have to shoulder my rifle and go through the motion of getting the nade out or whatever. Otherwise, I'd have to disconnect my line and put the rifle down. I mean, and you're talking seconds of extra time when it takes to disconnect the line and put it down and reconnect it. But they're all vital seconds when you're in the midst of a firefight. You need to get a nade off quicker, you can push a room or something. So I can understand why people would have a hang up on having a line roaming around. And I hear a lot of conjecture about lines, and people say, oh, they get caught on things and this, that, and the other. I've never had my line get caught on a bush or anything
that would only be
like that, and I've been crawling through things. Never.
I was going to say, if it gets caught, it's down to the way you've got it set up.
Yeah, it's just poor management. That's not.
You know, you could say the same about push-to-talk cable for a radio. You get that caught up, and people don't worry about them. You know, most of these guys have played with me in the past and know that the way I've got my plate carrier set up now.
Oh, I mean, it's
you've got the cables hanging. So I've got the cable from my headset down to the push-to-talk. Will just hang wherever it is. But then the cable from the push-to-talk to the radio that's on my back will be running through the little Velcro hooks on the plate carrier. And it's the same with I've seen people do that with the HPA lines as well. They run it through those little Velcro loops. Yeah. So the minute that they're out in game, it's just following down the plate carrier up their arm effectively to the rifle.
Yeah. The idea
it's just how you get it set up.
The idea of the HPA line through the top, like you strap, that's pretty much the same as a sling. So it should work like perfectly if you've got enough line there to be able to just to shoulder it or drop it and get your nade off. So it wouldn't interfere that way. So that's like.
There was a guy. There's a guy at level 2 used to run it through his U-backs down his sleeve, and then it used to come out. Obviously, the back of his, he did it through his sling loop rather than through his pistol grip. So it used to just, as he was obviously doing it, it's just attached through his sleeve. But obviously, then you can't swap arms if you need to, because there's always going to be pro and con for anything, isn't there?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's just about weighing up and saying, is this acceptable to me? Yes or no. My RM4's front wired. Christ, hate it being front wired, but it's a necessary evil, unfortunately, because I use a Magpul stock CTR, so there's no battery room in that, and there's nowhere to run cables on the old RM4s. It has to go front wired.
Is that the RM4 Is that the RM4 I used? I think it was
No, you used the Ronin T6.
Right.
There's a funny little story about that from when it magically stopped working halfway through the day, isn't it, Joe?
Now, see, I was educated, but I'd never used a bolt release before, and I did forget, and I cycled about 3 mags, and I went apeshit. I went to Keith, and he said, "Have you released the bolt?" And I went, "Yeah, I've released the bolt," and he went, "Okay, let's just leave it at that."
Yeah, so essentially I'd lent Joe a rifle for Stigma 2, and halfway through the very first game, he came up to me and went, "It stopped working. Stop firing. Don't know why. Check the battery out. Hang on a minute. This isn't a recoil. The T6s are just standard, like the VPS systems and stuff like that. But it's got the bolt release stop on empty. So he ran for his first mag, it stopped firing, and he came back to me puzzled. We spoke about this, Joe. I just said to him, "Did you put a new mag in and then press the bolt release?" And he's went, and just left.
I'd already cycled. I had like 5 mags. I'd already cycled all my mags, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" I was like, "Keith, this isn't working." And he just said, "Did you?"
It'll be exactly the same with the TM, though, won't it? So you get the people that buy a TM and they go, "Guns stop working," and it's because they don't know how to use bolt release.
In my defence, it was the first time I'd ever used like one that's like I've always used a mid-cap AEG, so I've usually get like 120 rounds, like before I stop, and then when I stop, I can just load again.
You still had 120 rounds. It just the gun didn't work until you
put
the
new
new
mag
mag
and pressed the bolt release. That's my problem.
Nothing to do with the mags, Joe. It's absolutely not. If anything, you got more BBs because it feeds every BB on KWA mags.
It just sounds like that Top Gear when they were like, it was working, then it stopped, and that's just Joe.
The irony is,
did you put more fuel in it?
Yeah, something I pull like nibs up when you'd say like if you wound the mag. Yeah, I wound the mag, and you try and wind the mag, and it's like bang on empty. You can just feel how loose it is. No, you've not.
Yeah, you live, you learn.
There you go, Joe. Someone else is with you.
See, just telling you, it's not a simple thing. Get a bolt lock and a HPA rifle. Let's fucking deal with that shit.
So, obviously you've been releasing a few videos around various different tech-related topics, Ben, which people can see on your socials and that, which we'll come to at the end as well. We'll go through all your socials. What do you see happening in the future? What would you like to do with Opies Airsoft moving forward?
I mean, at the minute, unfortunately, the blog sort of runs second to family life, like most things do with people's lives. You know, my partner at the minute, she's a week or two dropping off our second child. From the blog will sort of like comes slowly to a halt for a little bit while we would get things sorted at home. But I think in the future it'd just be to expand on the knowledge and things like that of HPA, remove the stigma from it completely, and ultimately it just comes down to education in airsoft HPA and stuff like that. But realistically, with HPA, there's only so much you can talk about the ins and outs of like the science of it, and what the systems are and stuff like that. And we need more innovation and stuff like that. So it'd be good to get the manufacturers starting to create little things for HPA and stuff like that. But generally, it just be to evolve the blog a little bit and just keep it going and put information out there for people. Because ultimately, the main reason I started the blog was when I wanted into HPA side of things. There wasn't an awful lot of information out there. There was a lot of bad information, and there was a lot of information from the US regarding HPA equipment, because generally that's where it's all manufactured, apart from a couple of companies in Europe that do it. So it was stepping stone for other people to understand information of HPA just a little bit simpler. So I'd be quite happy just continue plodding on doing that, really.
Cool. I think that pretty much sums it up for tonight. We've gone through some of the science of it, so hopefully people have a bit of a better understanding moving forward with what is going on with their RIF, and hopefully won't fall foul of any of the site rules or the laws with the dual creep and that, which is the main thing. We want to educate people so as they're not getting in trouble with these laws at the end of the day.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the information to do with HPA and sort of shameless little plug, but a couple of the posts I've done that specifically detail these things in great detail. If people want to have a look at them and have a read and understand better by taking them posts like a little bit at a time and just chipping away at it to try and understand it a bit better. Obviously, I've gone over it as quick as I can in very basic terms, and I'll just reiterate the point. With dual cricket, it just comes down so you've got a ping pong ball and a brick. So there is a difference with it. But yeah, if people want to have a look at the posts I've done regarding that, then I'd be very grateful for that. Because they take a lot longer than you think to write posts in that. Keith will know from his little days doing the other ones and that. They take a lot of time generally, and obviously with everything going on. It's nice to get feedback off people to see, they understand different terminology and stuff like that of what's going on.
Cool. Well,
all good.
It's all good, yeah.
All good.
Well,
Most
the
of
man of few words has spoken all good.
There's changing it, so yeah. Lack of understanding is usually the reason why people push things.
Yeah. 100%. Cool. I think that sums it up nicely, really, for today. We've gone into it, so hopefully people have a bit of a better understanding of what's actually going on inside the gun. We discussed a few things that we needed to as well. So it's been quite a productive discussion as well. Some great feedback from the guys in the chat as well. So all that's left really is to thank Ben for coming on the show.
Thank you, man.
Thank you very
much.
And then we'll just run through the socials. So Ben, where can people find you, get in touch with you?
So on Instagram is one of the biggest platforms I use purely for things like that. I put stupid stories up every now and again. So that is Opies_Airsoft, and on the blog that's running on Facebook only at the minute. There is something in the works in a long time where I'll reopen another website hopefully in the future when it all kicks off. But currently the blog is on Facebook as well, and if you type in the search bar at Opies Airsoft, you should be able to find it from there. Or if you go on to Instagram and look for Opies_Airsoft, the link to the Facebook blog will be on there as well.
Cool. Keith, where can people find you?
Instagram, but not asked about that. Don't worry about me. Joe.
I fucking hate you, Keith. Sandman_TSB.
Craig.
I kicked in the
Normally in the kitchen at parties.
Best place to be, where the food is.
Cool.
Wait, can I say has this sneaky jeebus?
What?
Nothing.
Why are you bringing up the past? Stop bringing up the past.
So,
Let it go, leave it.
Cool.
Just studying that.
So yeah,
Just
that's
waiting
it
for Airsoft
us.
Easter to happen so it comes back, you know what I mean?
So yeah, you can get in touch with us. Instagram at the Chairsofter Show, Facebook.com/Chairsofter Show, or by email andy@thechairsoftershow.co.uk. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Please go out, subscribe, share the links, tell your friends, so we can try and grow this moving forward.
Yeah.
But it's been some great input from you guys. And yeah, that's it for now. So look after each other, take care of each other, don't be a dick, and we'll see you guys next time on the Chairsofter Show. Bye for now, guys.
Peace.
Ciao.